Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks, Barry. Hello, everyone. I'm Spike. Actually, that stands for Special Prepared Individual for Key Events. And my name is actually Eric Kish. I was born right here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and in Erlanger Hospital, and I have a lot vested emotionally in this particular area of Tennessee. I'm a Tennessee hillbilly. I even speak to hillbilly. So what I'm going to speak now, I've got about a 20-minute presentation I did in Montana. I'm going to consolidate everything down as close as I can to 10 minutes. But the big thing I want to, in fact, ask all of you, does anyone know what rights we have left and where they come from? How do we utilize those rights? Anybody in here?
Our rights come from God.
That's correct. That says mandated in the Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, all men are created equal, that they're endowed by the Creator. Okay, the biggest thing that the defenders are concentrating on, because we're seeing all this happen, is that everything is getting subjugated or subverted into a contractual situation. Actually, in reality, in all the courts that you deal with, what's called the admiralty courts that's in the United States right now, is all we have. Everything's been converted. There is no common law courts. In 1776, everything was common law, and everything was those type court structures directly underneath the Constitution. But everything we have today is subverted and subjugated underneath the admiralty court system. Any questions? Okay, now, so what we're trying to do is get down to the nitty-gritty of how do we reestablish our unalienable rights. And unalienable, by the way, means non-changeable, non-transferable, cannot be given up except by the person who possessed it, which would be you, which would be all of us, and myself. I'm the only person who can give up my rights. No one else can take them from me. If they do, they become criminal in their action. Now, I've had so many people across my travels across the United States that have basically said, well, we've lost our rights. Well, that's not true. We've not lost any of our rights. They're still on paper, they're still defined, they're still there, but we can have our rights abused by a government, and that in that process of doing so, they can become criminal in their actions, but we have not lost our rights. They're still there. We're just not exercising them. It's like muscles of the body. You don't exercise them, they atrophy, and you lose them that way in terms of use, but we still have muscles. So this is what's going on in America today. Everything is admiralty court, and we contract everything away as defined in Black's Law Dictionary. What you got to look at is what's statutory versus what is the common law, what is the natural law, what is the laws of the land, which is the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. That's what we're dealing with. Now, in the statute courts, in order to perfect their interest, which all organizations try to do, is to perfect their interest. In doing so, they find ways to get around a particular obstacle or problem. Well, in terms of the efficiency of our way we think as human beings, government sees the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights as an obstacle to get around, and how do you do it? Well, what if you create definitions, and you just arbitrarily make these definitions up, and you put them in what's called Black's Law Dictionary, or OVA's dictionary, and you create a way to bind all of you into a contractual obligation, but doing it in such a very subtle way that you don't catch on to it. Trickery, deception. What do you think? That is what's happened in America today. We have been fooled and led down the merry path like a bunch of cattle following a bell, because we're all so interested in subverting in our micro interest that we don't think as a whole in terms of the Constitution. We don't have time for it. And I'm guilty of that just as much as most people that I meet. I'm not guilty of it now, but at one time I lived my little micro selfish life, and I thought that was the whole world. Turns out that's not the case. The world is in all of us, working together to maintain the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. And so there's the problem. So what we've got to recognize is get down to the nitty-gritty, and I'm not someone who likes to beat around the bush. I like to get to the point and get the problem solved. And then our organization is structured that way, is to find ways to solve the problem. Now, there's all kinds of patriot communities right now in Congress that are lobbying, like all the other organizations that are trying to subvert the republic for which it stands. And what are they accomplishing? For every one fire they put out, there's 4 or 5 more fires that get created. It's almost an exercise of futility. And so that doesn't seem to be getting the job done, because they're so what we call the progressives, the socialists, the fascists are so intent on executing this, they're going to do it no matter what. I don't care how much hell raising we do. They've already got their plan in action, and the way they see it, the American people are waking up. All of y'all are waking up. And so in this, they got to move faster. They're not going to stop. They're just going to move faster, and that's what you're seeing happening with Obama. Each generation of presidents that gets created, it's a done deal. It's like a prize fight where you own both fighters. And these progressives are so rich and powerful and have spent so many years, 80, 90, 100 years, working with this goal, planning for the next generation to take over in order to put us there. We're fighting a losing battle. Yes, it is important to put new people in, or new blood, constitutionally based, but I'm finding most of the people I run into, they don't have the new blood in terms of knowing the Constitution. They really don't know it. They know bits and pieces, but the overall concept is just, the overall thing is not there. The Republic is not just about being technically and constitutionally correct, as y'all were talking about. It's also about the heart. There has to be a soul behind it. Something that gives the connectivity to where we down deep inside, we want to do the right thing by our humanity. Not say, well, gosh, if I just screw the people over in one area, I might be able to buy my BMW I'm wanting to have. So we got to forget about those BMWs. We've got to get into the basics of what America was built on in the Republic. And so we've got to stop this contractual process that they're doing to bind us in the contract. Let me ask you this question. Does anybody know, or everybody know, that a contract that's done under fraud, non-disclosure, and duress has no validity? First-year law student understands that. They all know if you have duress behind a contract, or if you have fraud, if you have non-disclosure, that contract is no good. It can be challenged. It's weak, a weak contract. Now I'm going to ask you a question that's going to shock you. I'm going to throw out something at you. What if, I want to ask you, did everybody sign their driver's license under a little bit of duress? Think about it. When I signed mine back in the past, before I divorced myself of them, I signed because I was always worried about getting arrested in the last many years. That's called duress. There's also fraud behind it and non-disclosure. I'm just picking an example. How many of y'all got married by asking permission from the state? A contractual obligation, a three-way contract with the state. I don't know about y'all, but I prefer it was supposed to be between me and my woman and the big kahuna upstairs. Not the state. The state's not my God. So why did y'all subvert yourselves into that contractual relationship? I asked the question.
Because we didn't know any better.
Bingo. That is correct. That is the problem. They led us down the merry path. And everything we do, including the Social Security number, is part of that process. Because what they've done, they've lent that Social Security number to you. They've loaned it to you. You bind yourself by what's called an adhesion or applied contract, and all of a sudden you have no constitutional rights. They're gone. You now live under what's called the statutory law. The statutes, codes, rules, and regulations is now your master. You have subjugated yourself by your own design based on their deception. It's very good. I have to give them credit. It's slick. But that is what's going on in America today. And it's done for a particular reason. They have an agenda. If you read the Club of Rome and the International Monetary Fund and all these various groups, they are very arrogant in what they state is their plans for America and the world. It's not just about America. It's like you were saying. And what is your name, sir?
May.
May. It's like May was saying, in terms of what the agenda they're trying to achieve is to move us to more of a centralized organization in order to create efficiency to report to the headmasters, in this case, to create a world government. You cannot have a United States being here and being this powerful and then having the United Nations here. It don't work that way. They've got to have the central power. So something has to be done to bring this under control and to get it to where the United Nations is standing on top and all the other European unions, like for instance, the European Union was created. Well, what do you think they're trying to do in the United States? Do you know I come from an area where I've done research and talked to the people who are actually designing the freeways and things in order to create what's called the North American Union? Mary?
Yeah.
You've heard of the North American Union? Well, that's a freeway. Now, there was a big battle about that a year ago where all the ranchers of 10,000 number showed up in Houston to say no to this new trans-corridor highway, they called it back then.
I saw where they asked Romney about that. And Romney said he likes these highways. He likes to get out with his wife and drive.
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't that highway actually under construction?
It is actually under construction. Well, actually,
Running up through
I
Texas.
spoke to the designers, the architects, with PE licensed architects who are actually working on it. I interviewed one of them. And it is being designed as we speak. Even though publicly it was declared null and void, they weren't going to do it, the ranchers had spoken, we have listened to the people, which was a lie.
Well, what's happened? The same people that created the European Union are behind the creation of the North American Union.
Correct. All of it's interconnected. In fact, Spain was to be the principal contractor for the Trans-Corridor Highway, and revenues of all the toll roads it was going to be accessing this monstrous 13-lane highway was to be fed back to Spain because they couldn't have those revenues constantly feeding and strengthening the United States. Now, the architect I spoke to, the PE licensed architect, said, well, we've made some compromises. And he told me, he said, I don't like doing this, but they pay my paycheck, and I need the money. I don't like it, but I'm doing it. But he said they did make some compromises, and one of them is they're going to compromise on the toll roads, and the money will now not be fed back to Spain. And there's not going to be a Spanish company who will do the contracting. They compromised there. But the point is they were supposed to shut it down. 10,000 ranchers in all the town hall meetings showed up down there to stop it. And they didn't stop.
But it's like, didn't Bush sign a contract with the Canadians and also?
You're talking about Montebello.
Yeah.
Montebello, Canada, when the agreements were reached. Primarily, my understanding of that is they've signed an agreement through Mexico, Canada, and the United States to be able to bring Mexican and Canadian troops in the United States at will and on demand. And also,